This garden is part of a 5-acre property in Litchfield, Connecticut. The Belgian blocks and the stone paths define the formality of the garden, but within the individual beds themselves, the planting scheme is rather informal. The boxwoods in this section give formality to the garden. And as we move around to the left, we see some delphiniums that were grown from seed by the owner. The bed in the foreground is herb bed, mostly self-sown seedlings of dill, fennel, parsley. To the center of the garden, the highlight is a beautiful golden russet apple tree. The golden russet was very popular in the 19th century when it was grown primarily for cider. The trellis supports roses of the extremely hardy Canadian Explorer series, which do well in Litchfield, Connecticut. Planted near the barn are espaliered pear trees, which solves a frequent problem, and that is that these are large trees that take up a small amount of space because of the way they are severely pruned. Shrub hydrangeas, the astilbes and hostas, and the low-growing corydalus support the beautiful yellow and white color scheme of the garden. The red border that we see here faces west so that it gets afternoon sun to accent the colored foliage. The border was inspired by the red border at Hitcote and Great Dixter in England, and it features shrubs and perennials in reddish hues with contrasting chartreuse green. The shrubs were selected to contrast with the flowers and to provide interest when the flowers are not present. The edge of the border is planted with a variety of true red daylilies, sited to hide the dying foliage of red tulips. The chartreuse sumac that we see here with the red 9-bark behind it creates interest in the garden when the shrubs are not in flower. The variegated miscanthus grass gives a vertical interest to the garden, and the narrow leaves create contrast with the broader leaves of other plantings. Purple-leafed smokebush is called smokebush because of the filmy, airy look to the flowers. In a climate as cold as Litchfield, Connecticut, the bush does not always smoke or flower. Let's take a walk in the vegetable garden and see what's ready to harvest. The early spring in the vegetable garden is a good chance for lettuce and other salad crops to grow. We see frisee, the squash for later harvest, is making good growth. Cool season crops are ready. Here we see cabbage, broccoli, and cauliflower. The Swiss chard is a good long season crop for the garden as long as you pick it on a regular basis. This section of the garden is certainly ornamental as well as edible, with the curly frisee greens, the fennel, and the red romaine lettuce. The bush beans are adequately supported and kept clean by bamboo stakes. Blueberry bushes have already formed berries for picking later in the season, and the planting is protected by a netting to keep the birds out.